This podcast contains potentially adult language, adult themes, definitely drinking, and possibly sexual context. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Drinking with Authors, the epic podcast. I'm your host, Erica Lance. With me today is my brilliant co-host, is Bo Lake, and our amazing guest today is Nick Savage.
Woo!
Who's doing a parade wave. It's not that, okay, whatever. That's weird. If you're watching the YouTube, you're enjoying, don't do a parade waving. We've got some stuff to discuss first. Do not forget to like and subscribe. You're listening to us, so pick up whatever the damn device is that you're doing this on and hit like and subscribe right now. Like and subscribe. There you go. You're blurred out. Nobody can see your phone. Oh. And then don't forget to leave us a review. We prefer the drunk reviews. So if you want to wait to the end of this podcast, but you still have your device in your hand, so please do that. And if you would like to be on the podcast, please email drinkingwithauthors@gmail.com. Or if there's an author you'd like us to hunt down like a dog and track down and make come on this podcast, you can email us that too, and we would love to find them for you wherever they're being a recluse at. Also, our sponsor today is Skunk Brothers Spirits. If you go on their website, skunkbrothersspirits.com, coupon code DWA10, you can order epic things. Let me just say, I need to place my order. If I place my order, is get my sponsor to send me some more of their cinnamon blueberry, because it is the bomb. But they are veteran owned and they're USA, and they are just brilliant, wonderful people and family and stuff. Okay, let's talk about what we're drinking. I have a little post-it that tells me all those things, so I can do it. I am drinking in some of our DWA swag. It is a gin and tonic with lime and pomegranate. I am a fancy ass bitch today. Bo, what are you doing?
That is so fancy. I should have used my DWA glass, but I am in a Starbucks glass today, and it is a Bacardi and Coke Zero.
Ooh,
I put
fancy.
a little too much Bacardi in there.
That's okay. This is mainly like a gin with the hint of a tonic.
You put tonic near it.
It's mirrored tonic. Nick, what are you drinking?
I am drinking an Imperial Pumpkin Ale called Head of the Horseman, and it is a small craft brew by, hell if I know, D9 Brewing Company. So real quickly, me and my wife went to go get some pumpkin beer, because once a year we buy the pumpkin stuff, and we walk into Florida's ABC Liquor. It's like the Midwest version of Binny's, only not nearly as cool. But we walk in and we're looking at some stuff up front. Then we walk to the back cooler because I wanted to get myself some Dragon's Milk. And then my wife starts talking to the beer specialist, who, I did not know this, but quick side story. If you work at like ABC Liquor, it's not just like a job, it's a whole career. They fly this girl to conventions, to alcohol conventions, so she can learn about the different beers, the processes each company uses to make the beers, the hops they put, like all sorts of stuff. So she has a shelf. They give her a shelf, and they're like, you can have one case of this for the season, and if it sells out, we might start carrying it. So instead of buying the stuff they carry year round, we bought out the rest of the Head of the Horseman, as well as half of their spiked latte. It's a pumpkin spice latte spiked, kind of like they have spiked seltzers and stuff like that, but it's like lattes that are spiked, and some other stuff we bought out that we're just like, we're going to buy this because she recommended it, and she's from Jersey and we're from the Midwest, and she knows how to drink good beer, because Florida has no stouts, no porters. It's all foo-foo. Like, here's your beer that tastes like strawberries. And I'm like, who the fuck wants a beer that tastes like a goddamn strawberry? If I wanted to eat strawberries, I'd make a goddamn pie, but whatever. So we bought this stuff. I hate Florida beer.
Okay.
This is not Florida beer.
Says
This
the man
is
who's
beer.
drinking a pumpkin beer right now.
This is an Imperial Ale.
A pumpkin ale.
Yeah, this is an Imperial. This is 10% alcohol by volume. This is like drinking a lot.
Okay, now that we've gotten through all that, Mr. Savage,
I love that it's called Horseman, though.
I like that. That was good. Well done. Well placed. Good product placement. Let's talk a bit about your writing. When did you start writing?
Oh God. I got started writing. I have to do some math in my head. Just over 3 decades ago. Started with songs, poems, crap like that, and that morphed into screenplays. Did screenplays for a while, and always had trouble narrowing down the descriptions because I'm a very talkative person. And people were like, "You should try writing books." And I'm like, "No, I want to do movies." And they're like, "Just try writing books." I'm like, "Fine." So about 2016, I started writing books, and I was like, "Oh yeah, these work better." So books 2016, writing 3 decades ago. I'll leave it at that.
Wow. Okay, cool. So what was the first book you wrote?
The first book I wrote was actually the Fairland Incidents. It started as a writing exercise, actually. I wanted to get back into, after having written screenplays for a number of years and obviously being huge and successful at that, which is why I live in Florida and not Santa Monica. My dream is to live in Santa Monica. I started doing special effects makeup, blah, 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 wanted to get back into writing. And so me and my wife were at Old Town, and I kind of had this, I saw someone there and no one I knew, just some random person. And it kind of started a story in my head. I just got done watching a TV show, and I started as a writing exercise. And the writing exercise ended up being chapter 1. And I was like, okay, this could go somewhere. So then I started plotting and planning and made the first book.
Very cool. And then, so how many books have you published?
I had 6 books published independently, and then I got signed on to Four Horsemen Publications and took down, at first I took down all 3 of the Fairlane books that I had out, and they hooked me up with Blair, my editor, name drop. Find an editor named Blair.
Good job. Good job.
Yeah. And at first I wasn't one to think my baby wasn't ugly. Everyone's baby's ugly. Babies are hideous looking creatures when they're first born. But I was like, all right, let's go through Blair. And I get it back. And at first I was like, oh my God, she doesn't understand my writing. And then I was like, no, stop being an asshole. And then I was like, all right, let's go. And me and the lead editor at Four Horsemen and the CEO, whatever her title is, Val, had hours long conversations where they were on webcam with me talking and whatever. And I completely lost track of the question you asked, but I'm going to continue my story.
I appreciate 3 sips in on your pumpkin ale and you've lost your stuff. I mean,
I'm on meds as
I mean,
well.
but that's what it feels like to slog through your manuscript too, is you have to get real humble real fast.
Yes, that was it. Thank you. That was it. And then whatever shit happens now, I love my editor. I think she's great. And I love Jen and I love everyone there. And I took down all my independently published books because realizing your babies are ugly, especially when you try and do it all yourself. I am re-editing everything before I send it through to my editor so we can all be republished and look pretty.
I think that's awesome. I mean, the truth is there are almost like stages of grief. There are stages of editing process. And I think for a lot of self-published authors, they don't realize that, as you put it, their babies are ugly. And it's only because they're looking at it as this perfect gem and it's beautiful and it's wonderful. And then you get it out there and you're like, you keep changing tenses. Like, do you realize you keep changing tenses? You know,
well, it's because they polish it by themselves. So they're just in their own little world, like polishing their little gem. And they don't like look at it in the critical way that, say, us editors look at it, because we're looking at it through a completely different lens than they are.
Yes.
So they're like, this is a sweet baby. Look how beautiful it is. And we're like, let's tear this baby apart.
In the music industry, sorry. No, in the music industry, there's a term that it references musicians who record on shitty instruments and shitty, equipment, and then they try and polish it up in post-production. They said, you can't you can only polish a turd so much. You can coat it in gold, but it's just a gold covered turd. And it's kind of true in the publishing world if you can't get the book away from the author. Because if you can't get the book away from the author who wrote it, it's just going to be, sorry, my angry owl was yelling at me to do Duolingo. If you can't get a book away from the author who wrote it, all you're going to do is take this piece of shit and try and make it shiny. Whereas if you can get it to an editor, whether it's your line, your copy, or your developmental editor, someone who is separate from it, only then can you take something and actually turn it into a diamond.
I agree. I think one of my favorite things that I came to realize as an author is that I had a lot of story that was still in my head and that I thought was like obviously on the page, like it obviously is there. Everybody understands this. And one of the first short stories I ever published, my author asked me a question and I was like, well, that's the entire point of this fucking story. And it's not there in the story because the way she asked it to me was like, was it supposed to be this? And I was like, yeah, obviously you can read the whole thing. You know that. And it was not there. It was not on the pages. I was like, never mind, give me that back. I'm gonna go add it for like a few hundred words to this.
We're like, why can't you
so
see
that it's
between
there.
the lines? It's there. It's right between the lines. You just have to find it. And when no one finds what was in your head, then you're mad that like they don't get it.
Yes,
But
you feel like
you
they're
have to
not
actually
smart
put
enough.
it on the page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the big thing that I struggled with at first when I started doing screenplays. It was, what are you trying to say here? And I'm like, and you explain, and they're like, it doesn't say that at all. And if you can't do it, you're stuck in that world, and they're just dumb and they don't understand it. And then you start to realize, no one's dumb. It's just shitty writing, and you need to get better as a writer to say what you're actually trying to say, because there's a difference between subtext and just not saying shit. And a lot of authors, especially new authors, can't tell the difference between subtext and just not saying what you want to say.
I agree. Okay, I found out that Bo actually wrote a list of questions for this, which I never do because I drink too much. So I'm curious, Bo, what is the first question that you wrote for this? I'm super impressed, but do it.
All right. So I read the Fairlane incidents. I read it over the last week. And the first question that came to mind as I was reading is, you really love Orlando, Florida.
No.
Like Orlando is its own character in the
Yes.
story and kind of like represents Finn in a way. And he likes Orlando in a way I wouldn't expect a character like him to like it. Like he loves Disneyland. So I wanted to know how he seemed like he liked to go and he wanted to go on the Pirates of the Caribbean ride.
Yes.
And he likes those things. Like there's specific things there that he like carved out that he likes and gives him like a moment of introspection.
He has.
How does Orlando like do that for you?
To start with, Finn has a very big love-hate relationship with Disney, and I don't mention the D word in the book at all until the very end when they're at Disney Springs, and I only mention Disney Springs because it's a place and it's safe to talk about. But it's obvious who I'm talking about as an author in the book. But he has a love-hate relationship with it because Disney has given generations of people false expectations of what relationships should be and how you fall in love. Specifically, you don't see someone for 5 minutes, not interact with them, and then fall in love with them. Little Mermaid.
I've watched quite a lot of daytime TV that would contradict what you're saying, but continue.
I watched a lot of rom-coms that contradict what I'm saying too. But the it's that kind of I like to write the world as it is, not the world as it should be. And I know it's a very Hunter S. Thompson kind of approach to it, but it's the way it is. And so the reason I do that is, and ironically, it was one of the questions kind of on the last interview I just did, because it has to be in Orlando. This story could not have taken place in Chicago or New York or LA or insert big city here, and it definitely couldn't have taken place in a suburb or a small town like Sandwich, Illinois. It's a real town. I wasn't making up a town, but it couldn't have taken place there. And the reason is because he needed that love-hate with Orlando, with the gaudiness, because you go to Vegas and Vegas is gaudy. Vegas is bright lights, big city. But it's as gaudy as it is, it has a certain kind of dated classiness to it that is as bad as it is. I love Vegas. If I could live in the stratosphere, I would live in the stratosphere. I love Vegas.
I mean, Vegas doesn't lie about its gaudiness.
Yes.
Orlando kind of
does.
Like, we're not like that.
But Orlando does in the worst way. You walk down West Earl Bronson Memorial Drive, 192, and you see these gift shops, and they have these paintings and these relief sculptures on them that are eye-catching. So, oh my God, look at the giant mermaid. And then you look at the giant mermaid on the gift shop and you're like, holy crap, that sucks. That is a piece of shit mermaid that they've left up there for how many decades, and all they've done is repaint it, and it's a piece of shit, but it draws people into the store. Like literally, that is Orlando. Look at this giant piece of shit in the middle of Florida, and we're getting tens of thousands of people a year moving here going, oh my God, like humans that live here are the flies on the piece of shit that is Orlando. And there is something you have to love and respect about it. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I have lived down here for 6 years now, and I love it. I love this city because the natives are so like Florida. You know, every native is in some way the Florida man. Everyone who's lived down here for some amount of time is the Florida man. And Florida owns it. Florida owns it in a way that no other state owns. The only other states that own their ness is New York and their pizza and Chicago and their pizza. They own that shit. And Florida owns the nativeness that is Florida. And the only way to describe Orlando is we're all flies on the giant piece of shit, and we love that piece of shit. And it's just what it is. And I love it though. I do love Orlando. I love certain areas more than others. I love the Doc Phillips Center. We go when we can to see the Nutcracker that they put on, and you know, whatever they're putting on. And I love it. I love Orlando, but it is its own entity. And to call it a big city is kind of doing a disservice to big cities. And you can't say it's a small town because it's got 4.5 million people as of 2017. So it's definitely not tiny.
It's more like a sprawling thing with Disneyland just like in its center, like the
Disney
little
World,
like
Disney
diamond
World.
in its Disney World.
Disneyland is so much better than Disney
Orlando.
World. Yes. Disneyland is so much better than Disney World.
Having grown up in California, I will say Disneyland is different than Disney World, but as adults, we also see it very differently than children do. I'm just throwing that out there because
we notice the chips in the veneer, whereas kids will be like, it's beautiful, there's princesses, and we're like, oh, this is ugly. We can see where they like
the chips in the veneer is very much what Finn sees when you were talking about the pirates, that he's going into the pirates or whatever. No, he was going to the Haunted Mansion first, where he saw the facade and the backdrop and stuff. And adults see these things. But the reason Disneyland is better is it's condensed. Disneyland is, here's a bunch of rides in a couple stores. And it's all condensed. You don't have the 5 parks, but you have these iconic landmark rides that you're just not getting anywhere else. And they try and duplicate them here. But the problem is you duplicate the Haunted Mansion here. And it's not, here's the Haunted Mansion. It's here's 5 stores prepping you for the Haunted Mansion. Let's take all your money. You go in the Haunted Mansion, and then to get off the Haunted Mansion, you have to walk through like 3 more stores. It's like, just stop. We're gonna give you our money. We already give you like $8,000 just to get into the park for the day. You know, we're gonna buy your shitty food, your desserts that taste like sugar coated in like almond extract and nothing else, just a little sponges to it. But we're gonna give you the money because we're all trying to escape the crappy reality that is our lives. So you don't need the 800 stores to one ride and one stunt show. Give us the rides, give us the stunt shows, and have a couple stores. We're still going to go in and drain our bank accounts until our next paycheck.
Well, Disney. You have some emotions on this. I appreciate. I don't need hate mail from Disney for the show. So one thing I want to talk about though, because there's a unique part of your story. I'm still getting over COVID for everybody listening. If I cough, that's what it is. Welcome to COVID. You get things that gifts keep on giving to you. But one thing that's interesting is your romantic book, because it's a romance, is told from a male perspective by a male.
Yes.
And that is very different because most romances are written by females. There are some males that write them, but most of the time the POV is generally from the female point of view of the situation, even the ones written by males. And this is not that. So it makes it very, very interesting because you had to skate a line on telling it from a male perspective, but without offending the general audience for this book. Let's talk about that for a moment, shall we?
Sure. No. I actually love that because starting in screenplays and going through college when I went to college, it was write what you know, right? And all right, I can write what I know. And when they say that, they don't mean like write your biography. No one gives a shit about that. But I don't have boobs. I can't write about boobs in that sense. I've never played with a penis that wasn't my own. I can't write about that. But what I can write about is how guys who are musicians or guys that are straight look at women without it being in an offensive way. I'm not someone who thinks that women's suffrage is a bad thing. I'm not, like I remember when the Man Show was around, they went around seeing how smart people were and they're like, vote against, repel women's suffraging because they, suffraging sounds bad. One of those things. I understand these things and I'm not a bad, like I love women and equal rights, all that stuff, but I still like sex. Everybody still likes sex, no matter how much you are pro whatever, you're like sex good, sex feel nice. Dumb it down there. Like sex good. So I write from that perspective. I also have read enough memes on the internet to know that women don't lay down on a pillow and think about how their boobs feel in the moonlight as the pillow presses up against their boobs, boobily, bouncily, bobbly. And I don't want to be that author. And both you're trying to hold in a laughter on that one. I saw you go,
Yeah.
Read those. We've all read those. And
Yeah.
I'm not going to sit there and talk about my wife. I'm not going to. That was a bad segue. I'm not going to talk about my wife.
I'm not going to talk about my
My wife.
I was like, I need more gin to go on this ride. I feel like I'm on a Disney ride right now with Nick. This is like, why bother asking
I'm like, we're going from
Just let
boobs,
Nick
boobily.
and see
So
where the
watch
hell
out.
he's going. Where are we going, Nick? Never mind. I don't want directions. Explain.
I didn't want to write about throbbing cock and the veins pulsating in a penis. I don't care about that. And as much as women may, because if you're a straight woman, you might, dicks are ugly. It's just a simple fact. There's not a penis on the planet that you look at and you're like, my God, make it into a popsicle. I mean, you might, I don't know, whatever, but I've never seen one that I'm like, my God, I want to mount it on my wall. They're fucking ugly. So anyways, she shows me this passage in a book and it's a sex scene and it's literally this throbbing cock passage. And I'm just like, who actually cares about that? I'm not saying it doesn't have its point. In erotica, it has its point. The point of porn is to like border that like vulgarness without being offensive to its audience.
Mhm.
The point of erotica is to have those fantasies of BDSM and whatever juices you want covering you doing that stuff. But this is not erotica. And I didn't want to write about how a woman sees herself silhouetted in the moonlight and what her vagina looks like at that moment. Like no one does that. So I wanted to write from a male perspective that was realistic, that told what the men are thinking in the moment. Because when a guy's having sex or getting a blowy or whatever, there's thoughts running through his mind besides, and that was the thought at the moment that I had. But there's things. So I wanted to put that. Hold on, I need to drink more.
I'm not sure about that, but I'm going to join you. Let's do this.
There are things that that needed to be put down on paper, and I couldn't write that from a woman's point of view. And to very long story longer, I grew up in a house and my mom read Regency romance, and I understand that very high up people at Four Horsemen write Regency romance, and I've said it to her face. I hate Regency romance. I think it's crap. I don't believe women are damsels in distress that need to be saved, and I do not believe men are knight in shining armors. And if it's a gay couple, I do not believe men are damsels in distress and he needs a man to save them, or women and blah, blah, blah. No. So I wrote a shitty person who's in love with a shitty person, and they're shitty together. It's very much a Leaving Las Vegas. Like, if this ever got turned into a movie, I'd want Darren Aronofsky to direct it, because that guy is the king of, like, you watch a movie and go, my God, I need to kill myself so like Darren can respect me. Absolutely, like, you had to have that. But I wanted it because I wanted men to be able to read a book that involves sex that wasn't Fabio on the cover.
You know, it's interesting you say that, because one of the series that I read under Dahlia Lance, and hopefully, knock on wood, the second one to it's coming out, but we wrote a book, and it's co-written. I have a co-writer who writes with me that's the guy. So it's one chapter from the girl's perspective and one chapter from the guy's perspective, which are very different perspectives, right? But the book, the funny thing about that book for us is what you just said is, they're terrible fucking people. These guys are actually terrible people that don't have a redeeming arc that comes to them. They're still terrible people at the end of the book. And I love that, but I have to say, you're saying that it was a very, I don't want to say it was difficult to write. It was a very challenging writing it, because I think in nature, we want to have like some sort of redeeming thing where people get better. I think as humans, we generally want that. I'm not saying it has to be, but I'm saying generally a lot of stories, like my horror stories don't have happy endings. I catch shit about that all the time because they don't have happy endings. And people are like, but I want a happy ending. And I'm like, yeah, well, if somebody gets fucking hunted down by a poltergeist and whatever, they're not going to be okay at the end of it. But thank you for telling me.
Yeah, it's like readers really want there to be like growth, and they want to see themselves in the character. So if the character is a bad person, it's hard for readers to be like, I relate to this person, because they don't want to relate to a bad person. But I think we all have shitty qualities about us. And I think it's okay to write about shitty characters doing shitty character things.
I've had a lot of people read my books and tell me that they know this person. You know, they're like, oh my God, I dated Finn. I know Finn. I am Finn. I'm Faith. I'm Finn. And that's fine. That's what it's there for, is to write relatable characters. But they're not shitty people. They're good people who do shitty things. Let me say it that way. They're good people who do shitty things. And there is a difference between being a shitty person and someone who just happens to do shitty things.
Yeah.
But if you can write a relatable person who's lovable and shitty, they have no problem saying they relate to them, because they're still lovable. But people don't change. People do change. People can change, but they don't. All people do when they change is become who they already were and get rid of the things that they weren't. So it's one of the all-time best written TV shows is House. And I'm not saying that like the characters weren't a little too pigeonholey in Cameron's point of views and Chase's point of views, but House and Wilson himself, the show started where it ended. Him without, him on the verge of losing the license, and he loses it. And people don't change. So when a book ends, if a book starts here, if you're on a spiral, like here's a circle, right? A book starts here. It needs to end here, even if it's down here. But it has to go full circle. It can't go, he's a shitty person who abuses a woman, and at the end, he's happily married to the woman he abused and she's forgiven him. No, that doesn't happen in real life. It doesn't happen in books, and it can't happen in books. Abusers can stop abusing, but not with the same woman who's enabled them. And women can love someone who's not an abuser, or people not just women, anyone who's been abused can love someone who's not an abuser, but they can never love the abuser who they enable. They have to be able, you know what I'm saying? So Faith and Finn had to be apart for 17, 18 years in order to give it another shot. Because had they stayed together, when they stayed together, you read book 1, you know the big breakup scene, it never would have worked.
Yeah, and they're different people when they come back together in a way. Like
In a
they
way.
have both grown up a little bit.
But they're still the same.
Faith more than
kinda-
Finn.
Yeah, but they're still exactly Faith a little more than Finn, but they're still kind of
Yeah.
doing crappy things. Let's face
Like they
it,
still
the
like
hurricanes-
hook together like Legos in the same way they did before, but there's like cracks in the Legos now that they have to
Yeah.
like work within.
Exactly. And I think that happy endings in books are cop-out endings. Never do happy endings. That's just my
Well,
personal
and on that note, we're going to take a quick break and be right back and hopefully not get hate mail in the process.
Sample locally sourced, quality distilled spirits in the beautiful Columbia River Gorge. At Skunk Brothers Distillery, we're family owned, brewing small batch grain to bottle spirits, just like our grandfather did back in the Prohibition era. From handcrafted bourbons and moonshine to flavored blends and cordials infused with local fruit. Join us for a tasting tour and buy Skunk Brothers spirits straight from the source.
It's all in the family at Skunk Brothers Spirits, located in Stevenson, Washington.
I know you have more questions for me, Bo. So.
What? You what, Nick?
I said I know she has more questions for me. So
No, she does, but I
Oh,
want you to talk about, I'm afraid of her questions. They're leading to weird shit. I want you to talk a little bit about your writing process though. Like,
I do have questions about that.
okay, go ahead, Bo. What is one of your questions about his writing process, please?
All right.
I already know
Nick.
I'm regretting it.
yes, I know, right? The way she's
Just like-
starting. All right, let's.
All right. This
Yeah.
is I did not decide to make questions that were provocative. It just happened. So this
Okay.
one's not. So Finn is a very music oriented person because of his job. He names drops like John Bon Jovi, Static X, like a whole like multitude of things that are like different genre wise. What do you listen to when you write?
Okay, here's the funny thing. Depends on this chapter I'm writing. I have a couple of go-to albums that I will pop on any given chapter, any given day. One of them is the album Coma Noir by the Atlas Moth. They are a progressive post-metal, black metal, doom metal sludge band out of Chicago. They've released like 5 albums. This is by far their best album and probably in my top 10 all-time favorite albums, Coma Noir. I actually contacted one of the guys in the band and said, I want to turn this into a graphic novel. And he was like, oh, so do I. So I wrote the graphic novel. We're having an illustrator illustrate it. And I used as many song lyrics from the album as I can to like write the novel and stuff. Absolutely phenomenal work we're doing. Phenomenal album. I'll put that on. And part of the reason I put that on is because it's like doom metal, black metal influences. He'd probably argue with me on the genre. I have a hard time understanding a lot of the lyrics. So I'm okay with that because then it's just noise and I like the noise. I will put on an album called, I can't remember the name of it right now. Wolf is to Man by Bolt Gun. And they are an Australian ambient band. Like each song is like 15 minutes to half an hour long. There's no lyrics. There's no like bridge, refrain, chorus. It's just noise and it's beautiful and haunting. And the best way I could describe it is like, if you ever like wanted to like kill yourself, this would be what is going through your head as you're walking out to the sea. Absolutely beautiful stuff.
Wow.
The third artist, and it's any given album by her, is Rachel Yamagata, who is a technically she's a pop artist, but she's not poppy like Katy Perry or any of those people. Not that there's anything wrong with Katy Perry. She's very kind of melancholy and downtrodden and lovelorn and gritty. Imagine if Sarah
So like
McLachlan-
Alanis Morissette or Jewel.
if Jewel was good, better in Jewel's earlier days, yes. In Jewel's
Jewel
earlier
is
days,
better.
well, nowadays she's just pop, but in Jules' earlier days when she was like more indie, yes, but less pretty sounding. And
Like a Fiona Apple kind of vibe.
more Fiona Apple and Sarah McLachlan, but more adventurous Fiona and less I need to kill myself and adopt 10 dogs than Sarah McLachlan.
That's a lot of descriptive. Okay.
lot.
Do you ever, so you listen to albums, do you ever create playlists for your books?
Yes, if you go to Spotify, or if you go to the authornicksavage.com or to Spotify and look up my book titles, I have 3 playlists out right now. One based on the chapter titles, because all the chapters in the Fairlane books are song titles. I wasn't able to get permission to use the song lyrics from all but 3 bands. 3 bands gave me permission. And I said, forget it, I'm not doing 3 bands that have, so I took them out. But I created the playlist based off the chapter titles. And for book 1, my wife created a playlist for as many songs as she could based on all the musical references within the book.
Okay.
There are a few bands like Option 30 and Exotic Birds, which were Trent Reznor's bands before Nine Inch Nails, that don't have songs. You can find them on YouTube if you want to see some old like live handheld VCR recordings and stuff like that from back in the day. But we have an extensive playlist for the references for book 1 and then chapter titles if you go on Spotify.
Very cool. I like it. So what has been the difference now that you self-published versus now you've been formally published? What has been the difference as far as fan reactions?
The reviews are still good, which I like, so yay to that. People are more receptive to a traditionally published author than a self-published author, and I kind of fall into that same trap, and I hate it because it's very pretentious. In the music industry, you can be an indie musician and people respect it. They're like, oh, indie, going the hard road. Self-published authors are like, oh, so you uploaded something to Amazon KDP and now you're just an author. Yeah, but there is a difference. Because when you're self-published, you're either going to spend a crap ton of money editing something that's never going to be seen because you don't have the marketing or the publicity. I need more alcohol. Or the publicity skills to get it out there. So you're spending like $4,000 on editing that's never going to see the light of day, or you edit it yourself, and then you're stuck with what we talked about, the past tense issues, the present, the tensing issues, the fact that you don't know how to use a comma or a semicolon to save your life, all these grammatical things, all these, is the reader actually getting what I'm saying type stuff. When you're with a publisher and you have an editor who doesn't care about you because they don't know you, they care about making your book good, which is good when you can separate the author from the book because they don't care. I'm not saying the author doesn't care about me. I'm sure if I died, Blair would be upset. But I'm saying that her job is to care about my book. So in that sense, it's great because she cares about the book and she makes it better. And she catches, as much as I edit other people's works, I can't edit my own. You cannot edit your own stuff. You will suck at it. She catches stuff that I miss that I will get on average about 1 to 2 per book, clarify this a little more. That's not bad for 1 to 2 per book. And it's more like a sentence, not even a whole, like chapters. So I do that. That's a cohesive thought in my head, by the way. But the mailing list, what are those things called that you write once a month? Newsletters. I went from having like 5 subscribers to getting 2 bundles from my publisher that is now over 150, which to some authors is like, wow, that's nothing. I've had 1 book release. That's not bad. Like, to me, that's a pretty, and it's only growing from there because now I have the 2nd book releasing, and I don't know if we do like the giveaway on the 2nd book like we did in the first one, or if we just keep giving away the first one to have them buy the 2nd and 3rd. I don't know how this shit works. I just know they're doing their job. I'm writing, and it works great because that's the other thing. Oh my God, if you're a self-published person, get yourself a fucking publisher, not a vanity publisher. Don't go to a vanity publisher. You don't have to do 90% of the work when you're an author. You write, and you have to market yourself. You still have to publicize yourself. The biggest thing I can say is if you get a publisher, don't think they're going to do all the publicity work for you. You have to continue to publicize yourself. You have to continue to be a media whore. You have to. And it's just the way it goes. And there's nothing wrong with it. Power to the horse.
Yeah, no, I think that's true. So the reviews are good. Have you had anybody who read the first version and has read the second version has come back to you?
Not that I know of yet, but I don't talk to a lot of people. Like I haven't had fans like be like, oh my God. I can't say that. I do have one fan. I have a couple fans out there, but like one's busy being a mom, the other's busy getting through her own health issues. So she bought all of my books when I was self-published, and she ended up getting the free copy from the giveaway for book one, and that's the one she read. She bought all my books, hasn't read them. She reads the e-file she got for free, which I think is hysterical because that is fandom right there. That is fans. I'm going to buy this Pop Funko thing, keep it in the box and never use it. Then I'm going to buy something else to play with. And that's what she did, is she bought these books, has them autographed, and they're off to the side. But I'm waiting for her, or her name is Nessa, or Sherry, to read the new versions, or for Nessa, the old version, and get back to me and be like, dude, so glad you did, because I'm glad I did it. Hell, I've read the versions and I'm like, wow, I published this crap by myself. That was horrible. Horrible.
I think it's interesting that when you mention your fans, it's women when your genre is men's romance. Why do you think women are drawn to your books?
I'm not going to say women aren't drawn to my books. I mean, I'm one sexy motherfucker, but
Wow. Okay, we can do that.
Well,
That's
yeah,
all.
Confident.
But that was a joke. I don't think it's that women are drawn to they're. I think people are attracted to the difference of it's a male protagonist, it's a male MC, and there are other romance books out there that have male MCs and stuff like that. It's just a little different because it's not your happy ending, like Enchanted April, where everything just gets better and better throughout the book. It's very much a downward spiral. And I think people are drawn to the fact that it's erotic and it's nice, and it's not erotica, but it has its moments. You've read the scene with
It's sexy or steamy. Don't say
yeah,
erotic.
it is.
Very different.
No, it is. It's sexy.
Amazon doesn't like that. We don't say that word.
We don't say that word. That's a bad word for Amazon on your
Sorry. I apologize to the Jeff Bezos himself. Which, by the way, the Amazon logo, next time you look at the truck, just think of a penis and you'll never not see a penis in the Amazon logo again. And it's Jeff Bezos's penis. That's my theory. I think people are drawn to the book because, as sexy and steamy as it is, it's very realistic and very, in a sense, as much as you don't want to say this when like, oh, what's your book about, when you're at a signing, people walk up to you and like, oh, it's very cathartic in a sense of it's something you read and it makes you feel better about the shitty relationships you've been through, but also good about yourself because you're not alone in the world and you've experienced, the same crap that other people have.
It was very interesting to read from a man's perspective of like a romantic relationship, because I'm married and my husband will tell me things about like our relationship and how he sees it. But it's interesting to see it like from the culmination, like how he's looking at, like nostalgically looking at Faith, and then like what is happening in real time. And it was kind of like peeling back the curtain a little bit for me and being like, what do men think about?
Peel the onion. It is. But I did want to say though, it's that men won't read romance because there's that stigma. Men can't have feelings.
Yeah.
Men have to read about hunting and fishing and and doing manly things. And it's just like, well, okay, so if I wrote this book and it was like a guy meeting a girl in the woods while hunting and they had sex, would men read it more? Probably, but I'll leave that for another author. But it's I think men don't read as much as they would have otherwise, is because it has to deal with, romantic
Yeah,
relationships.
the R word is attached. They're like, romance. Ew, I can't read that. If I
But-
get seen
yeah.
reading romance, someone
But
will think something about me.
Yeah, but as far as peeling the onion goes, that was a French reference. It's true to the extent of people always want to go home again, and you can't. When you leave a relationship, you can't go back, because you will always think about the relationship you could have had and what you wanted it to be when you were in it before, and never what it is, what it was, the reality of it all. And this is him accepting the reality of it, or trying to anyhow, versus what he had thought he held her up to, standard wise, pedestal, blah, 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 when he tries not to. So it is a thing.
It's interesting. How much reading do you do in the genre, out of curiosity? Because we've heard how you feel about happy endings and stuff like that, but have you read a lot of romances just to get an idea of how they're written?
So I am traumatized by Danielle Steele and the Regency romance that she dominated while I was growing up. So no. I read a lot, but mainly what I read is true crime. Fantasy wise, I loved and I still love the Ravenloft fantasy based off the Ravenloft adventures of Dungeons and Dragons.
That is one of my least favorite campaigns to play in, because you basically fucking die. We can have a separate talk about that, because that you get thrown into Ravenloft, you're gonna fucking die. That and Dark Sun, they can suck it. Anyway, we can talk later.
Those are two of my favorites.
I only know about Dragonlance.
If you play, oh my God, Dragonlance, please go play video games. If you play D&D, we need to talk later. But yeah, sorry, I love DDO. Speaking of video games, I play Dungeons and Dragons online. Look for me on the Argonison server. I run the guild Sausage Kings of Chicago. I do. I love that guild. People stop me all the time. They're like, great name. I'm like, thanks. But I love, right now I'm actually reading author Angie Martin's book, Chrysalis, which is great. But I don't read a lot of romance books in terms of like your Hallmark stuff, like those kind of sweet romances. I don't read erotica because I don't care about the sex scenes, and that's like 2/3 of the books. Like I would be that guy that watches porn for the storyline. Just like, nope, don't care about the sex. Let's get the storyline. But it's one of those things where I don't, perhaps I should, but I feel like if I started reading stuff within the genre after years of being traumatized by the genre, and that's where my writing comes from, I almost don't want to heal that trauma, because then I couldn't write the romance that I write, if that's weird and completely self-destructive to say.
So you've told us about your least favorite romance trope, which is Regency romance.
I don't know if that's a trope. I don't think
Yeah,
It's a
it's not really
genre.
a trope.
it's a
It's not
genre.
like a genre. But
The
like-
damsel in distress is a trope.
Yeah, there's a trope. I'm almost done with my Bacardi. So what would be your
well done.
favorite trope?
My favorite trope. I do not know. In romance or in general?
Either or,
Romance.
whichever you want to answer.
You write in romance. I want to know what your favorite romance trope is.
Yeah, tell us your favorite romance trope.
I am so bad at tropes. It's funny because oh God, I'm gonna give away a huge secret here. When I write, I don't think about tropes. I think about the story.
But everything is tropes.
Yes, it is, but I don't think about it in that sense of like, I think about what I hate in writing and what I love in writing. And what I love is anything realistic, and what I hate is anything that Disney could promote. I don't like, and what I mean by that is I don't actually hate Disney. I like to play it up because it's fun for like interviews and stuff. And I know this is an interview that will be aired and I'm giving away my secrets. I don't like creating false expectations. So I guess my favorite thing to do in a book, whether it's a trope or not, is to create the realism of the situation. I like creating. See, I like my redheaded protagonists, and I know that they're going out of vogue right now. But I love my redheaded protagonist in my fantasy series. I love in my romance series. In my romance series, I like the fact that he can't stop making mistakes. I like the fact that Faith can't stay away from him for every reason she gives him to stay away from him. I like the fact that he becomes friends with a guy. Do you plan on reading book 2 and 3, Bo, or no?
Well, you're not giving away secrets on this anyway, because other people who do this plan on reading those. So how about we don't do
Don't
this?
tell us.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay. I
Spoiler
like
free.
spoiler free. Ah, shit me in the ass. I have no favorite trope. I have none. I can't narrow down a favorite trope. I can only tell you all the tropes I hate. Is that a weird, like completely like unhealthy way to view things? Is
So pessimistic.
I just avoid what I hate. It's true though. It's not pessimistic. I take a very realistic approach to things. I'm like, oh, I don't like that. I don't want to use that, so I don't do it. And it's just
Interesting. Okay. What's another question you have, Bo?
So as I was reading, I started to notice little references, and there were little horror references, and to an Orlando institution, coffee shop of horrors.
Yes.
Various horror movies.
Rest in peace.
And I know that you are writing a different series next that has more of that genre in it. And I'd love to hear your thoughts about horror.
Grew up watching horror, love horror. I'm not as big as a horror fan as like the people who are like covered in like The Nightmare Before Christmas. Not that it's horror, but it's in the genre now. Or like the Freddy Krueger slasher tattoos and stuff like that. But I grew up watching not only the big, 3 with the Michael Jason Freddy, the Hellraisers. I own Carnosaur on, I think 1, 2, and 3 on VHS. One movie I sold on VHS that I was very upset for selling was Cutting Class, which was Brad Pitt's very first film. He plays a killer. He plays the killer in this horror movie.
I haven't seen that one. That sounds good though.
Find it. If you are listening to this podcast, when you are done, write it down. Stop, find a pen, put down your drink, write down Cutting Class, Brad Pitt, and find the damn movie. It is absolutely phenomenal. It's not better than Fight Club or 12 Monkeys, but it is absolutely phenomenal. Go watch it, go find it. I also own 1984, which was Michael Fox before he was allowed into SAG, and he had to change his name to Michael J. Fox. Absolutely phenomenal movie. I love horror, so I have, even if I try to avoid it, in my writing, there will always be references, allusions to, or some sort of horror movie influence in my writing. And it's just because so much of it is ingrained in me. So much of the 80s. I mean, I am the youngest of the Gen Xers, and so much of the 80s is ingrained in me. My wife can't understand my obsession with Cobra Kai. I'm just like, because Karate Kid, the movie Karate Kid Part 1, I don't care about the others, it was such an iconic film that made, I know one of the stunt coordinators on Cobra Kai series, the whole reason he got into martial arts was because of the movie Karate Kid. And then he ends up working on Cobra Kai. And I love Cobra Kai because they kept the cheesiness of the 80s and just updated it for 2022 or whatever year it is. You know what I'm saying? It's absolutely great. Absolutely great. So I love the cheese. but horror will always be there. Coffee Shop of Horrors was a brick and mortar store. They closed down on September 1st. They had 2 locations. They're both gone. They're still online. But if anybody reads the book and they're like, I want to go to Coffee Shop of Horrors, you can't right now. They may open up another shop in the future. Who the hell knows? But it was real. It is now closed, as is one other place that was in one of the books. I can't remember what it was, but it is now also closed. But I do.
It was fun, like finding all the like little horror references, because I was like, oh, I love that movie. I love that movie. And I was like, Finn likes the same movies as me. Finn is cool. Like, it was nice to, because I know I do the same thing, like, because I love horror so much, I'll put little references in. And like my books aren't horror either. Well, I guess a little bit. So I will put like references in, and it was fun to see someone else do the same thing, especially knowing what your next series is. I don't know if you want to talk about it.
I'll talk about it. I
like,
mean, there are people who have
like
all 3 books.
know that was happening. I was like, oh, he's gonna be I know he's so excited to write that. I would be excited to write that.
Well, the reason
So
I
if you
also
want to talk
wanted-
about that.
Yeah, well, the reason I also wanted to go to like a place like Coffee Shop of Horrors instead of going to Starbucks is because Finn and Faith wouldn't meet at a Starbucks. They would meet at like
They're not
an actual-
Starbucksy people.
No, they would meet at an actual coffee house, if anything, but a Coffee Shop of Horrors for sure. You know what I'm saying? So it
Yeah.
was one of those things. The next series is a contemporary fantasy. And I don't say modern fantasy because I say modern romance. And people are like, what's the difference between modern romance and contemporary romance? Modern romance is far more realistic. And people don't talk to me like that. I'm not making fun of people. That's just my generic voice. It's like Mo from Simpsons. Modern romance, very realistic. It takes a look at romance from a modern perspective. It's not necessarily monogamous. It's not necessarily saying polyamory is the way to go. It's not, it's an open view on life and love and seeing what the hell happens, avoiding all the, husband, wife, white picket fence, 2.5 kids. It's always that have kids that sucks in a lot of the money. The dog, the cat, it's getting away from that and focusing on the fact that people in their 40s a lot of us are still childless because kids are expensive and the older generation destroyed the idea of families for us. So we have to reinvent these things. So that to me is modern romance versus contemporary romance, which would be romance that could be set in the 50s, but it's set in modern day. That's my idea of things. I could be wrong. I don't know. That's my truth.
Mhm.
My truth. Contemporary fantasy, however, is fantasy that takes place nowadays. And the next series deals with some of the same elements and themes of this. It's because at the end of the day, Fairlane is about self-acceptance. It's about a guy who's made his money and made his fame and fortune. And he's realizing, shit, maybe that should have been a dream and my life could have been better and more fulfilling if I left that as a dream and did something different with my life. In the West Haven Undead, it's similar themes through a different lens. It's about a group of kids who all high school, 2 cousins, they're friends, and the guy named Connor, his friend Jack, they're varsity baseball players, they're seniors, but they're stars of the team, but they're also slackers. They're in all honors classes, but instead of being like the button-up shirt polo kids with like their khakis and stuff, they're like, here's my Iron Maiden t-shirt, ripped jeans, and a flannel tied around my waist and my disheveled hair because I don't care. They're like, oh yeah. There's even a point in one of the books, no spoilers to the story, where he's like, gets a 94 and the teacher's like, only 94, and he's like, oh, I can't be perfect all the time. And like he did on purpose type shit, because he doesn't keep the expectations low type people. And his friend goes missing, and they're all like, this isn't right. The media's telling a story. Connor was at the house seeing the crime. He's like, they're lying. So they kind of go on this little like Scooby mission, you know what I'm saying? And in this mission, they discover, and their parents, least favorite trope. Least favorite trope. Clueless parents. I fucking hate it. I hate TV shows where a 12-year-old.
Oh, so you hated that in Nightmare on Elm Street, huh?
I hate it. I hate where you see TV shows where the 12-year-olds are smarter than the parents. No, unless your child is fucking Albert Einstein, your child is going to be dumber than you if he is 12. It is that goddamn simple. Dumb parents breed dumb children, smart parents breed smart children, but at 12, you'll always be dumber than your kid. And I'm not saying you can only breed dumb children if you're dumb, but you know what I'm saying. It's you at 12 are not going to be smarter than your parents. So to have clueless parents and smart children is stupid and unrealistic and should be done away with. That's my thing on that. But anyways, so the parents aren't clueless and aren't dumb. They're, parents, they might be alcoholics, but they're not clueless. But they're involved in their own issues because they're being hunted down and they don't know by who or by what. So they're trying to figure that shit out. So they're kind of preoccupied. So that's how I get away with having parents not being as involved as they should be, is they're preoccupied. So they're not clueless in the sense of being stupid. They're just off doing their thing. So the kids go on this kind of, we have to go find our friend, and then through this, they start to discover that there's more to them than, their little provincial town that, Belle sings about in Beauty and the Beast. It takes place in Chicago suburbs, not in Chicago itself, because it's a very suburbanite story in that sense, but it needs to take place in a melting pot. And Chicago is very diverse in its makeup. It could also have taken place it couldn't have taken place in New York because it's too big of a city. It's very diverse, but it's too big of a city to have taken place in a suburb type place like that. Florida is diverse as Florida is. It's too big of a certain population that I don't know about. It's a very Latin population here. I'm not Latin. I can't write from that perspective. That would be doing a whole, and I'm not like, oh, I can't write a woman. My main character is a woman. I could probably make her, any race that she wants to be, but it wouldn't be that culture. It wouldn't be that, and it wouldn't be a Florida story. So it had to be Chicago. But so they're going around, they find these things about themselves, but the story itself is a very, as much as it's fantasy, it's very sci-fi because it's set in autoimmune response and genetics. Instead of supernatural, I bite you, you bite me, we turn into vampires, silver bullets kill me, full moon, sparkling shit. It's none of that. Yeah. There's nothing wrong with it. I love those movies.
We have to wrap up, my friend Nick, this episode. I know, and then do other episodes. So I would like what advice you would give to authors out there.
Don't do it. What
advice you'd give to authors that they'd actually like to hear?
Nice advice.
I have no advice they would like to hear. Your baby will be ugly, and that's okay. Admit that you wrote something that is probably a great idea, and know that no matter how skilled you are, it will need work, and be okay with that, because no one's there to tear you down and tell you no and make you run away and make you reevaluate your life. People are there to help you even when it seems they're not. So take the advice and go with that, because no matter how pretty you think your baby is, it's covered in shit and mucus at first.
Okay.
Accurate.
Okay, I like it. Okay, shameless self-promotion time. How do people find your books and you?
To find all of the fantasy books are not available yet because I took them down from self-publishing, so my publisher put them back up. Go to fourhorsemanpublications.com in the little author section. Scroll down to the S, go to Savage, look for Nick Savage, go there. You can buy my books. You can also buy them at any major retailer website. You can go to my website, theauthornicksavage.com, and sign up for my newsletter. And you can find the links on there and buy them there. Or if you're a people person, walk into your nearest Books A Million, Barnes and Nobles, if any Borders still exist, Borders or whatever local bookshop. Ask them to order you a copy and get a copy. For the love of God, read words. They make you smart. Words smarter.
I like it. Thank you so much for being so shy on this show. I mean, I'm sure people will be surprised at how delicate you are.
Delicate flower, that Nick.
Delicate little Nick Savage. And no, thank you for being here. Thank you, Bo, for being my amazing co-host.
Yep.
This has been Drinking with Authors. I've been your host, Erica Lance. Don't forget now to like and subscribe. You're still listening, so you can hit the damn buttons. And because you've been drinking along with us, please leave us a review. We want drunk reviews. They're going to make this all better. And our sponsor today has been Skunk Brothers Spirits, coupon code DWA10. Check them out, and we will see you guys next time.